higher education institutional members or one of our member NGOs, then you can sign up for free. But we have very recently taken the decision to extend the opportunity to join LIDC member, even to those who aren't necessarily in one of our institutions. So please do take a moment to check that out. The LIDC webinar series is a continuation of our successful research seminar series. This has been a feature of LIDC's public engagement since the pandemic was declared, and we've had over 2,000 people joining us to talk about issues such as the impact of religion on COVID health messaging, racism in the global development sector. And next week, 10th of December, we are holding an event in support of the 16 Days of Activism campaign against gender-based violence. We also lead a UKRI GCRF Action Against Stunting Hub. We want to use our webinars to shine a spotlight on exciting research and initiatives and provide a platform for organisations and researchers to share their work with our audience of practitioners, students and NGOs, think tanks and the broader civil society. We believe that as part of our work as global development practitioners, we should not look at current events as though they exist in splendid isolation, but we should also look at the context and the histories that have led to global inequalities. As part of this, we had a webinar on the history of Creole of Sierra Leone, and the webinar today fits perfectly within that paradigm. We will first of all be hearing from Heidi Downs, who is a midwife at the antenatal screening service of the Wolfson Institute at the Preventative Medicine Centre, Queen Mary's University, which is one of LIDC's member institutions. Heidi had previously worked in a number of London NHS hospitals in a wide range of clinical roles. I was very excited to find out about Heidi when I read about her campaign that she launched to honour the memories of young enslaved women whose sacrifices led to the formation of a lot of gynaecological tools and techniques that are still in use today, such as the Sims speculum and the Sims sleeping position. I will not do Heidi's presentation for her because, of course, that's why she's here. But suffice to say that all of us at LIDC were very moved and inspired that someone learned about a historical injustice and has taken actual concrete action to try and put this historical injustice right. So thank you very much, Heidi, for joining us. Heidi will talk for 10-15 minutes, however long she feels comfortable. And then we will hear from Neomi Bennett, BEM, who I cannot believe responded so kindly and so positive when I suddenly thought I would love to have her at the webinar. Let me just send her a DM. What's the worst that could happen? And that was like a day ago. She responded and said, yeah, I will come at this notice, share my experience, my story, which is one of hope, I have to say, for those of us from non-traditional backgrounds. Her experience as a Black woman within the healthcare centre has been both inspiring, instructive and disturbing. I first heard about Neomi when I saw a report on the London News about vicious way that she was racially profiled and subsequently arrested by police who clearly didn't know who she was, and she was doing nothing more terrible than the crime of driving while Black. And as a lot of Black drivers know, all you have to do in London often is sit behind the wheel of your car with your Black skin and attract attention from the British police force. Neomi is a multi-award winning inventor, creator of a device that will actively save lives. So we're very proud that she's here. She's also a leading figure in an organisation that fights for equality within the British healthcare system. As anyone who's been watching the news knows, COVID-19 has thrown up a lot of the disparities in healthcare, Black and people from ethnic minority organisations and people in the Global South are far more likely to feel the effects of COVID-19 than other people. So we'll be hearing from Neomi about that. Just a reminder here that while the discussions and presentations are in progress, we'd really appreciate it if you could help us to minimise distractions and preserve bandwidth by keeping your cameras and microphones off. Once the presentations are over, we will open the floor for discussions. You can go ahead and write your questions in the chat, or you can just raise your hand using the blue icon in the participant section of Zoom, and we will come to you in the order that we see you. We'll try and get to everyone. We know it's going to be a very fruitful and interesting discussion. Please do bear with us. Please do keep your eye on the chat, because my colleague and my manager, Gun Benjaminson, is managing the chat and will make sure that everything is triaged perfectly. So with no further ado, other than to say, feel free to go ahead and live tweet. We tweet at LIDC UK, and for those of you who signed up, I sent you Naomi's and Heidi's Twitter handles. So with no further ado, I'm going to hand over to Heidi to start her introduction. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for having me. Following Naomi's introduction is going to be quite difficult, but so that's a pretty amazing background. So like I say, I'm Heidi. I am a midwife from London, qualified in 2013. And I'm here today to talk about a subject that I'm quite passionate about, regarding the medical experiments on enslaved women back in the 19th century. It came about from my colleague and friend Sam, who I'd like to give a shout out to today, working as midwives and doing this this work with regard to Dr. Sims. I've not been on my own, and I really have to say, Sam Fruin, Nikki Crawley, Frances Rivers and Paula Cummins, I have to say these women have all been in the background helping me fight this fight. We basically started out with Sam going to a study day spoken, and the speaker was Dr. Amali Lukagamagi, and she was speaking about the history of obstetrics and how it came about. Dr. Sims experimented on the enslaved women. He began conducting experiments on young enslaved women with no analgesia, obviously no consent, and myself and my colleagues, we just couldn't believe that we'd been midwives this long and we didn't know about this. How have we gone to university? How have we gone about our daily lives, used the Sims speculum, you know, and spoken about these sorts of amazing things that have gone on in midwifery, and have not been taught this? You know, I just think that was where my journey began, and we went from there. I have to say, you know, I wanted to come here and be really honest with you. I'm not a professional speaker. I'm a midwife, I'm a mum, I'm a sister, I'm a friend, and I'm also a white woman, obviously. But I've not experienced racism. You know, I'm coming from a place where I'm learning as I'm going. You know, there's no white saviour complex going on here. I literally heard something and just could not get it out of my head. I just couldn't believe that something so horrific had happened in midwifery history and it was not being taught to us. So the journey began. We got the petition going, the numbers were slow. I then wrote an article for the British Journal of Midwifery. Again, I'm not even, you know, a natural writer. You know, I had to work tooth and nail to get through my degree. But with the support of my friends, who I've just mentioned, it got published, and I was like, oh, it's amazing. I thought the numbers would fly through the roof of the petition. Again, no. So I was thinking, how can something so horrific, the history of midwifery, not be, you know, just so in the public eye? How is it not? How are people not disgusted by this, and trying to make these amazing women, Anarka, Lucy and Betsy, who are the forefront of this campaign, but there were other women who were subjected to these brutal experiments. So I just kept pushing and pushing, and just wondering what was going on. Why are we not knowing about this? And then I contacted the RCOG, the Royal College of Gynaecology in London, and to his credit, Dr. Eddie Morris, who's the president, invited me in, and we had a big meeting with Dr. Christine Akichi, and it was amazing. And they said they listened to me, and they listened to my argument and all what I'd been doing, and they said, right, okay, we're going to do something about this. So obviously I was just like ecstatic. So it went from there. That was a long time ago, that meeting back in March. And to their credit, I am quite annoying, I must admit. I am one of those people, I've just got the bit between my teeth. So I have been annoying them a little bit and atting them on Twitter quite a lot. Just to get, I want these women recognised. We want these women recognised for their part they played in midwifery and gynaecology techniques. So that's where I'm at now. So we're still fighting, and they've Dr. Christine Akichi and Dr. Morris have in the RCOG got the Race Equality Task Force. So the Race Equality Task Force was launched to reduce maternal health disparities in the UK, which I think is obviously amazing. And on the agenda is acknowledging Lucy, Anarka and Betsy and the women of gynaecology. So for that part, it's watch this space. I'm very excited, and if they are watching, I'm not going anywhere. I'm still going to keep fighting. But the broader story that has developed post Anarka, Lucy and Betsy is my learning as a white woman who, like I've said before, I've never experienced racism. I've just started, learning from this campaign of the disparities in health and in medicine. And I've got to be honest, it's left my jaw on the floor. With the Embrace report that came out last year of Black women 5 times more likely to die in pregnancy and postnatally, absolutely blew my brain. Brown women, Asian women, twice as likely to die. I just think, how is this even possible? So it got me looking into that as well. So not only am I fighting for recognition of Anarka, Lucy and Betsy, these women who endured brutal experimentation, so we as women can go about our day, after birth, and all these techniques that were used are still used today. So my fight is to get them acknowledged. My main new fight is about recognising the disparities in maternity for Black and brown women. I just think it shouldn't be the job of Black and brown women to fight for the right of every human being, every woman, to have the same level of care and the same outcome when they go in to have their baby. And the fact that myself and my friend Paula, for instance, who is Black, could go into hospital and she would be 5 times more likely to die, it just blows my brain. And I just think, as women, how terrifying must that be to read about that? So I just think it's been such a journey, and I just think it's about education. And I think, as well as acknowledging the women that Dr. Marion Sims operated on, I think it's about getting this on the curriculum, decolonising medical history, getting the real story of how these elements in time have been brushed under the carpet. And I have a little example actually that I wanted just to speak about today. I hope that's okay. So in my job in the Queen Mary's University at the Waltham, I work with this really amazing young woman called Yasmin Vade. Yasmin is one of our lab technicians, and she's applying to get into the medical field. So Yasmin was part of the ITV piece that I did, talking about Anarcha, Lucy and Betsy, and Marion Sims and what he did to these women. And Yasmin went away and read all about what we'd been doing in the campaign, and she come back and she said something quite amazing, and she blew me away. She said her husband, her cousin is a consultant at a London hospital, and he is an ophthalmologist, and they were talking about how unrecognised Black and brown women are in medical history, and she said that he'd gone away, the cousin, after speaking to her about Anarcha, Lucy and Betsy, and he'd come back and he said he couldn't quite believe, he's a consultant at this London hospital, and he read that a lady who has recently just passed, can I say, Dr. Patricia Bath, is an American ophthalmologist who is just the most incredible woman. She founded the Institute for Prevention of Blindness, and she believed that blindness was a basic human right. This woman's background, if you want to read about her, is incredible. Her accolade is amazing. Her work is amazing. But when I tell you that this consultant went back to Yasmin and said he had never heard of Dr. Patricia Bath, even though she'd invented a piece of equipment that he uses on a daily basis, I was absolutely blown out of the water. I just thought, at what point is this right? At what point are we not being taught about things that are relevant to the work we're doing and the lives we're living just because this woman was a Black woman? Because he knew about all the white men that had invented techniques and tools that he was using every day, but he could not believe that himself, and he said to Yasmin, most of my colleagues would not have heard of Patricia Bath. It just, for me, that was just a tiny element of why we need to start looking at the history we are teaching our children, the history we are teaching our students in medical school, not just midwives, nurses, doctors, everybody needs to recognise this. And then for me, as a white woman, who hasn't even experienced half of what the people that are listening today have been through, I just think it's really important we start recognising this, because to look back means we can move forward, and that is my big belief. So I've started out with one little campaign and it's grown into this massive thing, and I'm just grateful that you've given me the voice to come and talk to you guys today. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Heidi. I mean, I think you've just proved the adage that if you want something done, that you and Neomi are both here today. There's several points that you made there, and we've already had a couple of comments in the chat. So we will be opening up for Q&A later. I think I want to move straight on to Neomi. Very excited and very grateful, Neomi, that you responded so positively and kindly in agreeing to join us at such short notice today. So with no further ado, Neomi Bennett, BEM, I'm handing over to you.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, it's really nice to be here. Yeah, wherever I can help, I will always help and support, because I do think it's important that people do gain some hope. I just want to say thank you to Heidi, because that was so inspiring. And even me, I didn't know that about those individuals. So outside of this, I will definitely be wanting to find out more from Heidi. Yeah, so my name's Neomi Bennett. I'm a registered nurse. My journey into nursing began a few years ago. I went to Kingston University. While I was at university, I invented a product called NeoSlip, which is a slippery, it's like a slippery pouch that goes on patient's foot before this stocking, preventing DVT. Like anybody that's had an operation, they'll probably be familiar with hospital socks. So while I was doing a risk assessment essay, I invented a product. And then I literally just wanted to get a good grade. Like that was it. I'd never felt that I was going to go down the road of inventing a product. So my teachers really encouraged me. And then I started looking into manufacturing. And then basically, to cut a long story short, that took about 6 years, 5-6 years. I have IP on the organisation. I sell Neosip into NHS supply chain. I sell it to Boots chemists. You can order it. And also it's on prescription, FP10. I worked really close with the university. So really, I was so focused on building my business with Neosip. And I also did some agency nursing at the time. So that was my life, but my life just took a really, really different, it took a big turn, and completely, I was just basically, yeah. So as mentioned earlier, so last year I was literally sitting in my car, minding my own business in my car. I'd done a nursing shift. And then after the nursing shift, my dad's a musician, so I just went to watch my dad. Like I've done that all my life. He does open mic, so I did an open mic session. And then after that, I then went to drop my friend home. And my friend and I was sitting in my car. So when I bought the car, it had tinted windows. The windows were completely legal. Back inside, everything was perfectly legal. And then despite this, I just became suddenly surrounded by white police officers who were insisting, get out the car. You know, first of all, it started off with the tinted windows, but within less than 2 minutes, it then went on to stolen goods. And then they said we had armed weapons. And it was just like it was just so crazy, because I was asking the police, why do I need to get out of because they were saying, get out the car. And then it was plainclothes officers around the car. And one of them had like, they're tasers, but to me at the time, they actually looked like guns. I was petrified. So I was saying, I don't want to get out. I'm scared. I kept saying to me, it's scaring the life out of me, but they just didn't acknowledge that. And then like literally no proper explanation until it got to the stage where both these men, one came in the passenger side, and then at the same time the driver's side was open, and the two of them kind of physically dragged me out of the car. And it was so surreal, because I still didn't quite understand any of this, because this happened within the space of like 5 or 6 minutes, from sitting just having a conversation with my friend to now being dragged out the car with handcuffs on, looking at the area, just like, what is going on? Anyway, because I basically said to the police officer, I feel like you've targeted me, I feel like you've profiled me. And that was like, you know, once I named the elephant in the room, that seemed to really irritate him. He got so angry. All this initially started because they said that I've got they said I've got tinted windows, although the windows were never checked. The windows were legal. So they've dragged me out the car now. So I've watched them thinking, you know, what's going to happen now? They're searching my car. They searched my car. They looked in the boot. They pulled everything up. They pulled all the carpets up off my car floor, and it was so confusing. And anyway, to cut a long story short, they found absolutely nothing illegal, nothing to connect me with any crime. However, because the officer seemed to be annoyed with me, he said to me, you're not going anywhere tonight. And he basically, I was like, please, like really begging him, please, I need to go home. I've got my family at home. I've got work tomorrow. But he was like, you're not going anywhere. You disobeyed me, he said. And then they put me in the van. And even that was, because still had handcuffs on. I'm just thinking like, what's going on? And then he took me to the station. They literally put me in a cell. I think, yeah, that has to literally be the worst part of it for me. They put me in a cell. They searched me, took my fingerprints. And all this time, I'm still kind of confused. So then they kept me, like, they took me back to the station. And then like 18 hours later, like during being in the cell, they kept coming in and saying, do you know what you've done wrong? Do you know why you're here? And I kept saying no. And they said, okay, like, you know, we'll come back. So it was almost like they were waiting for me to, I don't know, say I knew, but I really didn't know. But to cut a long story short, when they eventually let me out, I was like, wow, that's great. I can go and get on with my life. But they said, no, sorry, Miss Bennett, you are going to court. We're going to court. And they took me to court. And then their statement said all sorts of things that didn't actually happen. They were saying that they found things in my car that I knew nothing about. They never said it to me at the time. But I went to court and the judge basically threw the book at me and said, you took too long to get out of the car. They contacted the Nursing and Midwifery Council because they said that the level of that crime was so severe that I put members of the public at risk. So then I had to face an investigation by the Nursing and Midwifery Council, and I lost my job for a month. And then, yeah, it was just like living in a nightmare. Every morning I would wake up like, am I out of that nightmare now? And then I would just see like the Crown prosecution letters. It's like, oh my God, I'm actually still here. Like, it's really it's not a nightmare. So, you know, it was very difficult. And yes, I was convicted. I was fined £1,000. It went on my DBS. So I just continued to fight. And eventually in May this year, I spent like £12,000. I've got this new business that I've been nurturing and growing. I literally took every penny out of my business to fight the case. And then in May this year, I got a notification. So we was due to go to court on the 25th of May, but on the 22nd, they sent a letter to my lawyer saying, you know, there was never any evidence, so we're not gonna contest the appeal. And then so I walked away without a smear to my name. And that's really what happened. And yeah, so my case was thrown out on the 22nd, and just coincidentally, the incident with George Floyd happened a few days later. And then I think for me, the best way that I could deal with it, because I was still in shock, because I was kind of so prepared to fight the police at trial. So so for me, the best thing that I did was I just put myself back into nursing. And obviously we had the start of COVID. So, but then I started to see a pattern when I was working on the front line. A lot of the departments, because I'm an agency nurse, I work across the country. I noticed that a lot of the black and brown nurses were like put in the more high risk areas. We didn't have any choice, and it just became so intense. So then what I started to do is talk to other nurses, and then nurses started to come to me because I'd been through the issue with the police. And then I realized 62% of black nurses that are referred to the NMC account in no further action. So it seemed like there was something's going wrong, because we're constantly being referred to the NMC. So I set up this organization eventually called Equality for Black Nurses. And now we have like weekly Zoom sessions where nurses can have a safe space to talk about their experience in and some of the bullying and harassment. We've also I've managed to get some in-house lawyers who can actually look at the Equality Acts to see if any of those have been breached. I'm also working with some culturally trained counsellors. So we're doing group therapy with the black nurses it's not just black nurses, we also have a lot of Asians. I've started to represent some nurses as well, and that's basically me. That's it in a nutshell. But I've kind of tried to turn a really negative situation into something positive. And now, you know, it's so rewarding to have nurses being able to support other black nurses who don't have a voice, because I think that was one of the things that struck me the most from when the police came to me and I was saying to him, I'm so scared. He literally didn't want to hear that. He didn't listen to me. So it's like they all took my voice from me when I was in court. The judges, I'm saying to the judges, you know, I'm just a nurse. I've never been in trouble before, but they didn't hear me. So that's my story.
Thank you very much, Neomi. Sorry, it was actually quite hard to listen to this material. I mean, I think I'm going to start off by thanking you both for coming here. I must say, I do realise how lucky I am that I work within an active dynamic team of global development practitioners, where we don't just theorize around why things happen around inequalities and in here and all over the world within the global development landscape, but I'm lucky enough to be able to be part of a team that wants to provide a platform to echo these stories and share the impact that racism and other forms of inequality have on all of us, our ability to thrive, survive, and develop. So yes, I mean, you could probably tell from the tone of my voice that I am actually quite moved at the moment, and it's not like I didn't know any of this stuff. But when you hear it from someone who's been through it, it does have very powerful impact. So thank you. And thank you, Heidi, for coming along and talking about your campaign. I love that you recognized that as a white woman, you hadn't lived with the social, economic effects of racial discrimination. And I think if you grow up in a society where that isn't part of your lived reality, you have to make an effort to find out about it.
Yeah.
And I love that you said, why is it our job? You know, why is it the job of Black people to be constantly fighting just to be, you know, let alone to be recognized and valued, but just to exist in a level playing field? We're so far away from that. Years after transatlantic slavery was abolished, you know, the fact that Nubian Jack is having to go round and actively put up plaques recognizing the contributions of African descended people to this society. The fact that Black women, as you say, are 5 times more likely to die in hospitals. And you mentioned not just the recognition, the lack of recognition, but the active silencing as Neomi's experience. You know, she's a multi-award winning inventor. And I would suggest that if she were a white man in a car, she would never have had that experience. So you're not just not recognized, you're actively silenced and shut down. And I think the experience that Neomi, given the position that she's had awards from the Queen, she holds the BEM. So just imagine if you haven't grown up in a society where you've experienced racial discrimination, take a moment to think about what living with that does to the psychosocial health of those who live with it every day, the trauma that it causes, the disempowerment, and the effect on people's mental health. I want to say a moment here about an event that we are having, which is about the recent cut in so-called aid. The UK government has cut its contribution to aid to the global development landscape from 0.7 to 0.5. Now, this is going to have a negligible impact on the UK's budget deficit. But what it does signal is that the government is blowing a whistle, really, showing that it doesn't care about global development and about inequalities throughout the world. That's what that signals, because that cut, while it won't affect the UK budget deficit, it will have a real devastating impact on development projects in the global south. Projects will have to close, lives will be lost, and the message that they're sending out is, yet again, you don't really matter. So that said, the point of this webinar is to provide a platform for your stories and to encourage discussion. There are a couple of people I noticed who put their comments in the chat, and I'm going to call on them now. First is Lena Saleh, and second, Nasim Udin. If you wouldn't mind putting your cameras and microphones on, I think it would be far better if you made your points yourselves rather than me making it on your behalf. Is that okay? So if we can go to you, Lena Saleh, first.
Hello, thank you for that talk. That was really, really interesting. Yeah, I feel really strongly about calling it disparities. I've been studying health inequalities for a very long time, and in the UK, it's traditionally been referred to as health inequalities. Some time ago, I moved to the US, and I noticed that over there, it's referred to as health disparities. And I've always felt that that was a whitewashing of just how unjust and how avoidable a lot of this structural racism is. And I've noticed that back here in the UK, it's been creeping into the discourse where we refer to it as disparities and not inequalities or inequities. And so I really do urge everyone to be more careful about using these words, because disparities just is differences, whereas inequality or inequities really points to the injustice that is inherent in the way that people are being treated, and how much of it is very avoidable. Thank you.
Perfect. A very, very important point, actually. And I don't know when I slipped into saying disparities myself. I think I read it and then just absorbed it. And language is very powerful. It does reflect how power is distributed in society. So thank you very much, Lena. I stand corrected, and I will henceforth try and abolish that phrase from my vocabulary. Nasim Udin, if you are around and still with us, would you like to unmute, maybe put your camera on and raise a point? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for introducing me. I won't put my video on if that's all right. I'll just speak to you. One of my questions for Heidi was that, thank you for your talk, and also to Naomi. But for Heidi, my question was, following your meeting with the RCOG, I just wondered if there are any outcomes or actions that might get them to teach this, you know, the upcoming new generation of doctors and nurses to learn about some of the history behind these techniques and tools that they'll be practicing.
So the meeting, which, you know, I was really grateful for, I have to say, they have been really good, was more about Anarka, Lucy and Betsy, and, you know, getting these amazing women recognised for their part that they played. With regard to, you know, getting this on the curriculum, I'm just one of many. There are some fabulous women out there that have been doing this a lot longer than me. And I mentioned one earlier, Amali Luka-Gamagi. Getting it on the curriculum, I think, is slightly separate. I think that's down a different road, but it would be something that I would be more than happy to put towards the RCOG. Again, like I said at the beginning, you know, I'm a midwife. I don't want to say just a midwife, but I'm a midwife, and I'm learning as I go. For me, it's become as important, getting it on the curriculum, as getting Lucy and Anarka and Betsy recognised. So I think it would be the Racial Equality Task Force have got already this on their agenda to get these women recognised. So I don't see why this can't be put forward as well as, and make it, you know, maybe, you know, one whole subject rather than just two separate ones. But I totally agree with you. For me, it's teaching the young can only improve the future, you know.
Yes, I agree. I mean, I am aware that training curricula owned, devised by the Royal Colleges. So, and these are updated every 2 years. So there should be even small amendments. They don't, you know, it's something towards that direction. And, you know, you just became aware of this a few months ago. And there's a new generation coming up behind you. And you mentioned your colleague who's a consultant, you know, at consultant level, and he wasn't aware of this. So I think it's worthwhile, certainly, putting forward to the medical royal colleges to amend their training curricula in this way. So it was good to hear that they met with you and heard you out, and hopefully there's activity happening in this space for that change.
For sure, yeah. And I'll keep everyone updated as we go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both very much for that. I jotted something down from the chat. I've actually, let me see if I can find the person who posted about it. It's about a book called Medical Apartheid which is a book that I know led to the campaign that succeeded in having Marion Sims' statue removed from Central Park in New York in 2018. So although the recent debates around Black Lives Matter and for racial justice and racial equality have spotlighted just how many statues there are praising people who actively carried out brutality on the bodies of Black people, the campaigns have been going on for a number of years. So I believe the book's called Medical Apartheid, The Dark History of Experimentation or something like that. So I'm certainly going to be looking that up, and thank you to whoever put it in the chat. I'm sorry I couldn't find you to go to you, but if you want to use your raise hand icon, we will take questions from there. At this point, I want to encourage also my colleagues who are here. I know some of you are on leave and have joined this webinar from other countries where you're supposed to be relaxing. So thank you. It's a testament to the wonderful women, mostly women, that I work with. If any of you would like to mention any upcoming LIDC or Action Against Stunting Hub events that you have coming up, please do use the raise hand icon. And now we're going to go to actually someone who's very dear to my heart, Sharina Cosbert. You have your hand up if you would like to ask a question. Love to hear from you.
Hi,
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Shireen. Thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Naomi. Whilst listening to you, Naomi, a lot of things came up. I've also been racially profiled by the police for driving whilst Black. And I just wanted to speak love into you and let you know that you're not alone. We're here with you, and whatever you need, please continue to let the community know. You know, so proud of you for telling your truth. Very inspired by you, and yeah, I'm hoping that your story will encourage the rest of us to continue to be aware and to just be better human beings, really. I did want to ask if there were any ramifications for the officers that did abuse you.
Well, we've lodged a complaint, and they basically, the police officers, the organisation have said that it was a reasonable execution of force, and they said it was basically warranted, and they did no wrongdoing. However, I do have a lawyer, and they're actually looking at the whole thing for us at the moment. We're trying to get the IOPC to look at the case, because I genuinely did nothing wrong. So yeah, but the officers, I think obviously they're still working and stuff. But yeah, but I do try and draw more now on the positives in terms of being able to help other people, because it does feel quite overwhelming. But like every day I feel like a lot stronger, and I am sort of focusing more on how to like just utilize it in a good way. I think obviously being an entrepreneur, I'm always trying to think of like trying to make the good out of bad sort of thing. So, but thank you so much.
I think if I can jump in here, Naomi, clearly what you're doing here today is part of the good that's come out of that. You know, the fact that you're here, that you're telling your story, you know, it's attraction rather than promotion. You know, you're really showing that you're still standing strong, because this stuff is traumatic, you know, and it's I think the temptation when we've been through something like this is to think, okay, it's done now. I managed to not get the, you know, the marks against my character. I managed to sort of clear my name when you hadn't actually done anything wrong in the first place. But I'm very pleased about the fact that you're suing the police. There was one particular summer where I was arrested 8 times. Now I have to say, this is because I was part of an anti-racist campaign, so it was in that context, but we did sue the police. It did go to court and we won. We were all given, you know, quite good sums of money that we, you know, used in the community. But at the time that it happens, it's very traumatic. And it's quite understandable that some people will just think, I need to keep my head down. Maybe if I start kicking up a fuss, blah, 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 they might come back for me. And this is how people get silenced and traumatized. So very, very proud and happy that you're doing that. And it does work. You know, the law is here supposedly for all of us, and we have to use it against the people who are oppressing and bullying. So thank you for that, and for your contribution to our healthcare as well. The fact that you've created something that's going to actively save people's lives. Now, Abena Opara has made a couple of points in the chat, and I'd like to encourage you, Abena, to voice those points yourself. If you're able to unmute, feel free to go ahead and use your camera if you'd like to. If you don't want to, then I'll just read them out, but I'd rather they came from you. And then we'll somebody else. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. This question is to Heidi. You said you want to recognize the ladies who were, you know, used for these experiments. I want to know, what exactly do you want to do in terms of recognition? Is it to bring their names, you know, let their names be known in books or in the medical field or in the school curriculum, or you want to take it further? Can you sort of go into it a bit more? And also this second question to, sorry, I forgot your name, the Black lady, is to find out, Naomi, sorry, yeah, thank you. It's to find out, what do you call it, if you can claim compensation, because just like our host is saying, so often, especially with our Black boys as well, so often they break people down to the point where you just hide, you become like a recluse, you know, and you think that, you know, I can't, your spirit, your soul, whoever you are, gets completely, you know, hidden, crushed, you know, and you spend the rest of your life living like, you know, a fraction of yourself, even that, you know. So I want to know if you are going to ask for compensation, because you had to use all your savings from your business, you know, to fight this case for something that you haven't done. So that is revenue that you've lost, apart from, like our host is saying, your mental, how it had effects on you and the trauma that you had to face. And apart from that, behind you is also a family who had to go through the same thing, you know, probably even worse, because it's worse when you're there behind somebody, you're trying to kind of like support them. And, you know, and you're wondering, you know, how they're feeling, are they good, you know, what's going on with them and all the rest of it. You know, it's even more traumatic. So I'd like to know if you're thinking of that, and if you're not, why not?
No, have I got time to answer?
Yes, please do.
Yeah, I think for me, yeah, I do have a lawyer, and it almost, I guess in some ways, maybe I am burying my head in the sand or I'm procrastinating, but it still feels quite difficult. And I kind of get so much satisfaction on building the organization. So I know that I'm acutely aware that I probably could do more on it, but at the moment, I do have a lawyer. So the lawyer is working on it for me, which for me is better, because it still feels it's traumatic, you know. And like at one stage, the police were wanting me to come and sit and talk with them. So they just kept sending me letters and emails, and I found that really quite traumatic. But even the long-term effects now, if I see a police car now, I literally pull over, because I fear that if I just don't want to draw any attention to myself. So I'm very hyper-conscious. But no, definitely the lawyer I've got, they're very good and they are working through it for me.
Okay, because I was going to say the lawyers are not good. You can't change them.
No, they're very, the lawyers, actually, they're wonderful. They're very reassuring. Okay. Yeah, thank you.
So Neomi, on that, I would refer you back to your own earrings. You are a queen. You need to be treated as a queen.
Thank you.
So please do pursue this. We have a few hands up in the chat. I'm going to start first of all with Brooklyn Masters, then Anna Martins, then Keisha Nurse, hope I said that correct, and Naomi Gabriel. So over to you, Brooklyn, please.
Masters. Sorry, I've got my little boy in the background. Thank you, Shireen, so much for holding this webinar, and thank you both to Heidi and Naomi. It was really beautiful to actually just hear both of your stories and experiences of what you are, doing and actively working. It does trouble my heart to hear that, Black women, such as myself, I gave birth this year during COVID, and the way my maternity care was completely different to how it has been with my other children. And I, currently work with a company called Birth Companions that help looking at, dealing with women that, that suffer from professional hands in maternity care. And we are currently working with the Royal College of Gynaecology and the National Maternity and Perinatal Audit to do a sprint auditory about why this is happening, to see whether or not they can get some stuff to help change, like practices that help change, because we had a meeting actually on Tuesday, and it was looking at the minority ethnicities that have to have emergency C-sections, the reasons behind it, the state of their mental health, their maternity care, and it's like Heidi said, Black women are 5 times more likely, and it's just like, why? What is it all about? And I'm taking part in it as a layperson, because I feel like if we don't all speak up and use our voices, nothing will change. It may not be much and it may not change in my lifetime, but hopefully when I've got 3 girls, when they are having their children, or when their children are having children, that's a little part of what I've done, and what you 2 ladies are actually doing, will impact the care that they receive. So yeah, I truly respect the hard work that you have both put in, and like Naomi, like my heart absolutely goes to you, because I'm not gonna lie, hearing your story, there was this untold anger that came up, because like yourself, my mother is a nurse, who works in the field, who works tirelessly, hard for everybody. She doesn't look at anybody by the colour of their skin. And to know that you were injustices, so it really kind of, it touched the nerve. But to see the positive that has come out of it is actually a blessing and a testament to you and your strength. So I'm sending you both so much love. And Shireen, thank you so much for this. It's been absolutely amazing.
Thank you so much for that, Brooklyn. I think I was talking to somebody recently about another event that we had, and they made similar comment. And my response is that this is my duty. Women like Anarka, Lucy, and Betsy, their names should not be forgotten. And in case you didn't know, Heidi has launched a petition to have Anarka, Lucy, and Betsy. Anarka was, I believe, from what I've learned from Heidi, operated on 30 times. And these operations took place under the gaze of other white professionals, male professionals in the 1850s with no anesthetic, because as Heidi's informed us, Marion Sims believed that Black people didn't feel pain, right? Went on to be honored. So we called this webinar under the rubric of decolonization, because we know that colonialism has left a very powerful, real legacy on the world and on our ability to live slave lives today. One of the things that LIDC has done is we've convened a decolonization working group, which is with academics from our member colleges. And we are working towards a conference in June next year, 23rd and 24th, where obviously we're doing that. We're working towards equitable partnerships with our colleagues in the Global South. If you're interested in knowing more about that, then you can email us admin@lidc.ac.uk or connect with us on Twitter. Thank you very much, Brooklyn. And I'm going to go next. So these will be the last speakers that we take because we're running out of time. Anna Martinj, then Keisha, and then Neomi Gabriel. And then if he's still around, there was a comment from Hugh Waddington that I would like us to round off with, because I think it's a lovely comment to end this webinar with. So over to you, Anna.
So firstly, I'd like to say thank you very much to the speakers. It was a very, very interesting talk and sad at the same time. My question is I guess, to both, as you are both health practitioners, and the issue of maternal mortality being so much higher for Black women as compared to white is really worrying. And you know, being pregnant and giving birth is worrying at best, but having that knowledge, I think, makes it at least 5 times worse. So I was wondering whether there has been any kind of assessment as to where the main points are that may lead to this increased mortality of Black women, where the failings are, at what specific points, so if there's any kind of specific reasons for that, and whether this can be specifically tackled and new policies and practice changes can be implemented to specifically address this problem. Thank you.
I can start with from the Embrace report that put all this forward, all this information for us to move forward with. I know that they've been looking. Sadly, there's no just one answer, and you know, we've got to ask ourselves why this is happening. And you know, you do get the doubters, you know, having a little well, you know, how can this be? It can be because there's statistics and there's proof with this now. You know, in the 2019 Embrace report, Black women are 5 times more likely. The previous report to that, 3 years prior to that, they were 3 times more likely. So where we feel like we're going forward, are we really? Are we really going forward when we've got a statistic that's jumped from 3 times more likely to die than their white counterparts than them, you know, now we're on 5 times. Heaven forbid, you know, in 3 years, are we going to be on 8 times more likely to die than their white counterparts? So to answer your question, from my point of view, from what I've read, I don't think there's one answer that they're looking into. I think there is your socio-economic background. I think that's and also the big one is, systemic racism. You know, there's different elements that they're trying to pinpoint why this is happening, but does it come down to the caregivers in the healthcare profession? And again, it's just something that I need to highlight. You know, these questions need to be answered. It's uncomfortable and it's not nice to talk about. And you know, like I've said before, you know, just looking at your care and the care you give, this is why, you know, my campaign has come on to, you know, looking at why these statistics have happened, because I've just found a pattern of Sims believed that Black women didn't feel pain. and Sims operated on these women with no pain relief. Has this, you know, inadvertently throughout the years come down and integrated into medical care that we are, you know, giving to black and brown women? You know, subconsciously, I'm not saying, or unconsciously, I'm not saying that medical professionals would go out, not all, you know, would necessarily do something, you know, consciously to these women. But are we unconsciously giving different care to someone because they are black or they are brown? And that is one of the things that is being looked into. So hopefully in the next Embrace report, we will be able to address that and get that put forward.
Thank you very much for that, Heidi. That's a very important point. You reminded me actually that a few months ago, LIDC held a webinar on the topic of racism in the global development sector. Because although we are global development practitioners and we know what we're supposed to be working towards, people bring their prejudices and their privilege into these, you know, jobs that give them power over other people's lives in the global development landscape. And I have to say, I think that was the largest event that we ever had. There will be a recording of it on our website and on our YouTube channel. We had a great panel for that one. And it is a topic that's nowhere near having been adequately addressed. The issue of racism within the global development sector that is supposed to be combating inequalities is itself riven with discrimination. So I want to go over now to Keisha Nurse, and then our final contribution will be from Hugh Waddington, if he would, I haven't asked his permission, but if he would like to make his comment publicly. So over to you, Keisha.
Hi, thank you so much. Heidi, thank you very much for your presentation. And honestly, I'm overwhelmed by all of it. I had absolutely no idea. And Naomi, I'm angry for you. It's absolutely disgusting what happened. Yeah, I'm angry. But listening to the talks today and then thinking about the medical profession, and then I think of the medical profession as a whole, and then also think about psychology and psychotherapy and how that too is very white, and the trauma that is inflicted on Black and brown bodies every day within the medical profession. But then if you do eventually get the privilege to go and speak to somebody in psychology or psychotherapy, you're met with another white face. And that too causes more trauma, especially when there are many Black people who are trying to get into that profession, and the level of complaints of racism by trainees in that profession that don't actually get to the end because they continuously are met with racism trying to get that degree, trying to move further ahead to work within mental health because they know the mental health trauma that is inflicted on Black and brown people every single day. So I'm wondering, is LIDC looking at psychology and psychotherapy as well in terms of the racial disparities within the profession?
Sorry, could I answer you now, Keisha, before I go over to Hugh? So
yeah, of course.
Great. So LIDC, I don't know how much you know about us, but we are essentially a research collaboration consortium active in issues around global development. So a lot of the events that we have come from our ideas or suggestions. So you've just made a suggestion. I would encourage you, if you can, to link up with us on Twitter, send a DM, or as I say, as I mentioned before, our email address, admin@lidc.ac.uk. We've recently had a man join our team, but we are by and large a small organization. There's about 4 or 5 of us, I like to think quite dynamic women. and we will find the energy to do most things. So we do need your ideas because we don't think of everything. Fortunately, I read about Heidi's campaign when I was researching doing some research for our social media, which is what's led to this webinar today. But I don't have all the ideas. A lot of the ideas that we have come from suggestions and contributions from people that we meet through events like this. So please do go ahead. Maybe sign up for our mailing list, join LIDC, be part of the conversation. This is an invitation to all of you. We need you to be part of, because I'm not an academic. I'm not a qualified researcher. I'm a woman who works in LIDC. So help us work to combating these inequalities. Give us your suggestions, your feedback, your time, if you have it to spare. I know everyone's very busy. So I'm going to hand over to Hugh for his comment quite shortly, if he's still around. I realize most people join these webinars in their lunch hour, and we have gone a little bit over time. So after Hugh has made his comment, I will then work towards closing this event. Before I do, thank you all very much for joining us. Stay with us just a few minutes more. We're getting there. So over to you, Hugh.
I think Hugh has left.
Has he left? Right. I think if I could have had the foresight to find his comment and read it, I would have done so. But essentially, it was a contribution. Oh, here we go. I found it. He said, thanks to Neomi and Heidi for the great and informative talks. I also read about these stories in the paper last year. Neomi, I agree with everyone that it is a real honor that you would come and speak at LIDC about this important cause. Equally, Heidi, you've done the work. You know, all that needs to happen for evil to persist is for good people to do nothing. Evil happened, you did something. Thank you for investing the time, the effort, the action, for being open to learning and to being so willing to engage and to commit yourself to righting this injustice. Thank you everybody for joining us today. We hope you've got something from it. I hope we were able to include all of the people who wanted to speak. I was delighted to have a chance to see that beautiful baby. Really made my day. What a lovely way to go into the weekend. We're going into the weekend with hope, with commitment. We can do this, and it's our duty to do this. So let's carry on, people. Onwards, upwards, link up with us, stay with the fight. Thank you very much for joining us. We hope we will see you next week, Thursday. Look at our website, look at our Twitter feed, look at the chat for the 2 events that we are holding next week. We hope to see you there. Thank you and goodbye.